are. Welcome to Keep What You Earn. I'm so happy to have you.
I am so happy to be here.
I'm just thrilled to have you on, and I'm so excited for our listeners to gain everything they're going to get in the next whatever minutes from you. This is going to be fantastic. Could you just briefly introduce yourself, a little bit of your backstory for those listening who maybe haven't heard of you or seen you before?
Absolutely. And I'm going to keep it as short as possible so that we can dovetail those details, because what I know about you is that you are a listener of the podcast. And so you're going to be able to insert different parts of my story and narrative to best serve the listener. So what we'll do is we'll start like super high level. And I will start off by saying that I am the daughter of an immigrant. I married my high school sweetheart. I am the very, very fortunate and lucky mother of Luna Soul. I am also a creative at heart. I love telling stories. I love connecting the dots. I love making money, and I get to serve people along the way. I currently serve as CEO of Social Curator, a marketing business that helps small business owners get their message out into the world and grow their business, their passion, and their dreams. And I get to do it alongside my business partner and husband, JD.
And I love, it's going to sound so funny, but I'm going to hang on to, I love that you said I like to make money,
I do.
because a lot of people won't admit that.
It took me a very long time to admit it. And, I think specifically the first time I heard a woman say that, it kind of sent like a lightning bolt through me, because I said, did I hear her right? And it almost acted as a shield to me to start saying those things and normalize that conversation, because I don't like to make money to make money. I like to make money in exchange for the services and value that I'm putting out into the world. And I want people to really own that. We all have a power and we all can help somebody. And the more that we help, the more we serve and the more value we're putting out, the more people will be able to compensate us for what it is. And I firmly, firmly believe that we must give far more than we get. And so I think that you and I creating this free content for people, regardless if they ever give us a penny, we are serving in greater proportion than we are giving. So as successful as I become, please know it is a very small percentage to the amount and energy that I am giving and that you are giving. So yes, I want to say that, and I want to empower other people to say that too.
And I will say, I mean, I like to make money too, but guys, pay me in action. Pay
Woo!
me in action.
Yes.
That is how I live. I'm just like, pay me if you go do the work. I have actually sidebar. I've actually launched a course and said, if you finish it, it's free. And if you go do the thing, it's free.
Oh.
I will rebate you the entire cost if you prove you did the work.
Oh, that's good. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a slow clap. That is so gangster.
I said, pay me in action.
Gangster.
I take
Yes.
payment. I get credit, cash, and action.
That's right.
If you don't want to pay the money, put in the work and
Yes.
show me that you will do it. Yes.
Oh, come on. You did not come to play today. It's like we should get the Church of Shannon out here. This is good. This is good.
I love it. And that's how we live here. So what you take away from this podcast, guys, you have to share it. You have to say what you're doing, how you're implementing, because otherwise it's entertainment. It might as well be Netflix. If you're just consuming and you're not doing the work, you might as well be in front of Netflix, just eating up and soaking it in. But I want to talk about money, because this is called Keep What You Earn, and listeners, we talk about money a lot. And one of the things I think is fascinating about your story is just your story in general, from where you came to where you are, and your money story. Because I know that you say you like to make money. I know that Jasmine, pre-photo biz, pre-law school, wasn't exactly saying that rolling off the tongue. So can you tell us a little bit about your money story and how it's evolved through the different phases of your career and life?
Thank you for giving the space for that. And it paints a fuller picture. And I think that what happens is we unconsciously tell ourselves stories around money. And the stories that I told myself around money were really shaped by childhood. And so being the daughter of immigrants, my father is from Mexico, my mother's from Puerto Rico, and they met in East Los Angeles. So I can't even say that we were living paycheck to paycheck, because the paycheck itself wasn't paying the bills. And so my dad would take on extra jobs to make sure that there was food on the table. And even despite his best efforts and being one of the hardest working men I ever knew, we were really subsidized by birthdays, Christmases, any sort of holiday. It was people from the church would give my parents money or give us gifts. And so what happens is I'm growing up and I'm only ever on the receiving end. Like, well, what happens for us happens for us. And it was never on the front end that we could be an activator, that we could change the way our lives show up if we apply a different thought and then a different action. And so then all of a sudden, I'm seeing that money was a thing to be lost. My parents lost their home. We had government issued food. My parents really had to go back through and sit in a financial seminar. And as kids, we're watching our parents cut up their credit cards. Like, what did this mean? How did it impact us? And so I constantly, subconsciously lived in a state of fear. Now, as a child, I didn't wake up thinking, oh, we're not going to have anything to eat. But when you open the refrigerator and there really isn't anything there but guava juice and a stack of tortillas, you wonder, how is this actually going to work out for us? And any sort of cash that I got by a lemonade stand or selling things at a garage sale, I would iron my money and then I would put it in a Band-Aid box and I would hide it. And I'm like, this is for a rainy day. And when I think back to that 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, I'm so deeply compassionate because unknowingly she felt unsafe and the money made her feel safe. But if money makes you feel safe and then the money story you're telling yourself is that something that it could be lost, then you're in a perpetual state of fear and doubt and scarcity. And I was carrying that through with me as I went to law school. I dropped out and then I felt unsafe. Where is the money? My mom was also sick. She had a relapse of brain cancer. We were uncertain what was going to happen there. There was so much uncertainty in my life that when I started my business, it was a thing to be lost. And then within the first 12 months of my business, I had created a 6-figure revenue stream. And so this right here is so profound in the way that somebody looks at money, because I never had money. And then in 12 months, what my husband and I were able to do was more than my father, for the family of 7, couldn't even do in 3 years. And so in my mind, we weren't just rich. We were kind of like, I'm taking you to Claim Jumper and you can order anything on the menu. It was like this money became life-changing. But just because you came into money, if you don't change your belief about the money, it will never be enough. And so here I was growing businesses and businesses over the years and pivots and iterations and creating multiple diverse revenue streams. And I still couldn't say I like making money. And I still couldn't say it was ever enough. And so I think that my first in engagement and interaction was with a mentor by the name of James Wedmore. And he immediately spotted and started calling out all my gaps. And I felt like I was good at making money. I could never admit that. But then when I met James, I learned to say and embody and embrace, I'm a revenue generator. And if for some reason, God forbid, everything goes away from one day to the next, my belief is that I'm a revenue generator. So what I did before, I can do again. And this time in a shorter amount of time, because I learned a lot of lessons. And that became freeing and it became powerful. And it was also a way for me to release the judgments that I had around money and simply said, money doesn't define me. It is not a thing to be lost. It is a thing to be navigated and owned and shared generously. And I think that that has had such a profound change in my business and my outlook that the business continued to grow and I don't feel any attachment to it. And for that, I am forever indebted to that kind of shift in perspective.
I love it. And is that now impacting, are you consciously framing that for Luna, or do you think you will, in terms of the narrative or the story, or how do you think that will shape hers? Because, it will probably be a slightly different story for her. So is there anything that you're consciously doing to speak that in front of her, or to expose her to certain things, or to teach her certain things? And of course, you may not know, she's very, very young, but what goes through your mind when it comes to influencing Luna when it comes to money?
I love this question so much. And I don't actually talk about it at all publicly. Not because I don't want to. It's just, I only talk about things as they come up organically. Our daughter is 3.5 at the time of this recording. And I'm already thinking about conscious ways to introduce that money is a mechanism and money is a tool, but it doesn't have any definition of who we are or our potential in the world. 2 examples come to light. And I know that she's 3. And so we're trying to introduce what it looks like for a good day's work and to take pride in what it is you do. And this past weekend, we were getting our lawn like resodded and there was mulch and there's trimming. And so it was a big big deal. There were 3 gentlemen working tirelessly. It's so hot. It was like 90 something degrees in Southern California. And these 3 gentlemen are out there with hats and gloves, and they're putting in an honest, good, hard day's work. And we came home and we saw them working. And so JD is cutting up watermelon and water and having Luna take it out to them and thanking them for their work. And as he came in, and I'm getting a little lump in my throat, I told JD how much I appreciated that, because that was my dad. My dad was taking those weekend jobs, and those weekend jobs are the thing that really changed the way that we were able to show up. And so the fact that we can honor these men, and at the end of a job well done, yes, we paid them, and then it was a gift. And I have never said this, nor it just is truly our truth, in that we had pulled out cash as a way to extend gratuity, not expected, but because we have been given much, we give much. And so we gave Luna a check for the work rendered, and then we also gave her cash to deliver to each man, and we said gracias por su servicio. In Spanish, it's thank you for your service. And there's pride in what it is they do, and they get to go home, and maybe they get to take their family out to dinner the way that our dad once a month took us out to dinner, and that feels so good. Now, also, what we don't talk very much about is we have an endowment at Children's Hospital of Orange County in the mental health department. It's one of the very few, it's the second mental health pediatric center in the United States. And we're so passionate about mental health, and we wanted to like really go deep with this organization. And October 10th is Mental Health Day. And so they invited me to come and speak to the mental health division with the children. And we are sponsoring a taco dinner, and my mom and dad are coming with me. And unfortunately, Luna's a little too young to go to the event. But as we continue to build out these relationships within the community, we want her to be serving, and we want her to be standing there with us. And we want her to show that like wealth is something to be created and shared with others the way that it was shared with her mom and dad growing up as well.
I absolutely love that. And I share a similar type of mission. We don't have children yet. We'll be likely on a similar journey to yours. But what we have experienced too, and what I've experienced, I've told this story on the show before, but I want to share with you. My dad taught me about money at a very young age, but in a very approachable way. So instead of buying that toy at Toys R Us, my dad said, no, sweetie, I'm going to buy you a piece of that whole store. And I was like, what?
Oh,
and I was like, I was like 10. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he got me a share of Toys R Us. And I was like, the hell is this piece of paper? It's worse than socks. This is worse than socks at Christmas. What is this, Dad? I want the Barbie, damn it. And it was, Shannon, let me explain something to you. That thing you'll use for a month, it'll die. You'll get some enjoyment out of it. You'll get some quick satisfaction out of this. This though, you hang on to this, you can buy whatever you want. You hang on to this, it will turn into more money. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he explained to me how stocks worked. I was like 10 or 11. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And, judgment free. When I grew up and became, majored in accounting and did all the things, right? And I studied this. I began to study this. I actually wanted to be a language teacher. I wanted to teach Spanish. I actually speak Spanish pretty fluently. But my dad said, the language you need to teach is accounting, the language of business. That's what you need to be teaching. And he explained to me that nobody learned it the way I learned it. He's like, you need to go teach it the way you learned it. And that's exactly what I've been doing, and what this mission is, and kind of why this show exists is to, it's almost like what you're doing with Luna is like what he did to me. Is he exposed it to me early on in a very approachable way, not giving it any sort of meaning, tone, negative, positive. It was a tool. And this is how you use it. This is how you use it for creating art. This is how you use it for destruction. Your choice. And I 100% have always neutralized money. And I realized getting into business that not everyone does, that there's a lot of association on the positive and the negative in a very polarizing way. And that was enlightening for me to realize. And now what's really interesting is speaking to those people and bringing them more into that neutral. So I really appreciate that story and what you're doing for Luna. It definitely sits in my heart. That is awesome.
Thank you for allowing me to share it, but also that hearing the story of your dad really does empower me to have very similar things. It's like, it's when you are a sojourner and when you're a pioneer of changing financial legacy for your family, you hope you're doing it right. And so then when I see somebody who is of similar ilk, but did have a different type of like a father or a pioneer in her life, it shows me what's possible for my daughter. And when you're like, hey, good job, I'm like, great, never been here before, but if you got tips, I'll always take them. So continue creating and continue doing in this way. And I feel very hopeful and thankful because I start running with different people who maybe come from wealth in a different way. And I remember talking to somebody and he had said his children, he has 3 kids, all of them are in high school, and he's talking about them going into weekend seminars about family wealth. And so he's teaching them how to manage their family wealth when his children know they aren't getting anything when he passes. There's like small things, right? Each parent's going to buy them a rental property and it's going to accrue over time. But beyond that, they're not leaving a trust fund for them. And so they said that their goal is to raise their kids to manage the family trust. And depending on what it is they do with their investments, that would then be what they would be able to pull at a later point in time. And I was fascinated by this. I'm like, oh my God, like that's brilliant. And yet we don't have these conversations, and we get to normalize these conversations now, and we get to create mechanisms to open people's eyes. And so I share that because it was so enlightening for me, and it kind of like gave me a little flicker of a light of what we can do in the future. And I hope that other people take that too, because we can change generations.
Exactly. And there are folks, I mean, there are a lot of folks online, especially just because that's the space I happen to be in and follow too, talking about making money, talking about generating money, marketing, sales, sexy stuff, right? Like pointing and dancing on social media, all the things. And not enough conversation of like, so here's what I'm doing. Like, here's my money strategy, or here's what I'm doing to create generational wealth. And I think there's more of that coming out, but it's great to have these stories come into the light and come to the surface. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I know that numbers and money is not an easy topic, not only because of the story behind them, but there's a discomfort in looking at the numbers, looking them in the face, and kind of addressing the truth that they're kind of screaming at you. I know I've heard on your podcast a few times that was a struggle. I want to find out more about that in, when you're addressing your metrics, your numbers, the things that are looking back at you, how you look at them and how that's changed as a business owner.
So, okay. So early childhood memories is seeing my Puerto Rican grandfather stand in front of the television, and he would pull out a comb from his back pocket, and he'd be wearing like a white tank top and then like these creased pants, really starched, creased down the front. He'd have this thick leather belt, and he'd pull out his black comb, and he'd stand in front of the television, comb his hair back. He's very proud of his hair because my father was losing his hair at the same time my grandfather was keeping all of his hair. So he just kind of like pull back his hair, and whatever he saw the Dow Jones doing that day, he's like, oh, it's a good day in America. Good day. Terrible day. He had no money in the stock markets. But that was my first early insights into what the Dow Jones was and what it meant, which was literally nothing. And so in my mind, when I was looking at finances early starting my business, even though every year I was making progressively more, it made me feel progressively shackled because I had more to lose. Never in my life had I had that. And so the more I made, the more I stood to lose. And so instead of looking at numbers, I just avoided them. And I'm like, as long as I'm not looking, it's okay. And perhaps it was, but it was a very foolish decision because for plenty of time, if I had just taken an extra $200, $2,000 and started putting it in long-term investments, instead of avoidance, I could have been ahead. It is the acceptance in seeing that there are small, tiny ways, even if you're not pocketing 2 million profit that year, that there's these small micro wins that compound over time. And the sooner you make those decisions, even if it is $20 a month, hey, $20 a month when you're 32 makes a big difference when you're 62 because it's compounding. I wish I had understood those things earlier. And so now what we actively do is sit down with financial reports, and we are looking at where are we overspending? What could we cut back? What are the inefficiencies in our personal finances and in our business finances? And now we're able to look at them not siloed, what did I do this month? It's what does this mean overall? What kind of forecasting are we making? So just because you had 2 behind months, like we've we've been enough business enough to know that there are cycles, and you say, okay, well, here's going to be an upswing and this is what's going to be pulling back and this is where we're going to reinvest. And so to me, being able to look at numbers without them having power made me a lot more educated and took a lot of pride in micro savings and micro investing to build long-term macro wealth.
I think you're right. And I think that, I know you say without them having power, and I know what you mean. I think they have power. They have the power you assign them
Oh, yes, girl.
in the
Yes.
way that you want to.
Yes.
But like we have the power to decide what
Yes.
power they have.
Yes. Yes. And I
100%.
was
And
assigning
it's,
so much power, Shannon, like ridiculous amounts of power. And
and
the
I
minute I
appreciate that
decided
so much.
to like reassign the power, the minute I got into the driver's seat, nothing changed, zero changed about the finances. The power and the thoughts I assigned to them did, and it manifested so physically as a visceral difference.
That's amazing. And so what do you think, did anything trigger the shift? Like, did you like to start looking at them? Did anything happen, or did you get, or was anyone influencing you in a certain way to say, you got to look at this? Because usually we don't go on the diet until the jeans don't fit. So we don't look at the scale until we're like, hey, like I'm squeezing into the skinny jeans and I can't jump up and down anymore. I need to look at what's actually happening. And that's just true with money. It's true of all of us. We don't see the problem until the problem is very much showing up.
Mhm.
So is this a similar story for you guys, or is it more so that you had some influences saying, hey, you really got to look at your numbers?
Dang, Shannon, you bringing out the goods, girl. Like there is stuff that I just don't talk about, but I'm like, I'm not afraid to talk about it. It's just, I'm just not going to come forward because it's not like my zone. It's not what I speak about. And so you're asking questions and I only ever answer honestly. It took me a while. There wasn't like one pivotal moment where I had this coming to. It was a slow progression of looking at the bank account with more frequency and then disassociating feelings to them. And then it was hiring a CFO, going through and understanding money in a different way. It was understanding that our personal finances should be invested differently, all these micro changes. And the biggest shift unknowingly was becoming a mom. And I would say, I mean, it sounds very idyllic and Disneyfied for me to say, like, I became a mom and then I wanted to empower my daughter. And it is that, but it didn't come as a natural oasis for myself. It was a very strong conversation that I had with JD. And he had said that we have to show our daughter a strong female figure and not to abdicate financial awareness and literacy to her partner. And I don't want to admit it, but I largely was abdicating that because, well, I've known my husband more than I have not known my husband. And we built this business together and we had particular lanes. Like my lane was marketing, branding, and he does like legal and finances and ops. And so it felt like good. It was, I'll just be honest, it was a very nice cape to say, yeah, I know my finances, but my partner is like, oh, it's not for me. And he had said that what we model for our daughter is going to be what she herself possesses in a relationship in the future. And that to me was the most jarring thing because I don't want to raise an impotent daughter. I want her not to be this powerful force that she's the end all know all. I want her to be an equal partner with her partner to say, how can we change the trajectory? How can we elongate our financial legacies from our families that we're bringing together? And to me, that was the biggest shift was when my husband had said, we are modeling it and he doesn't want our daughter to reserve that information for her partner only. And I agreed. And that to me was like a big shift inside out.
I love that. It's basically what I'm hearing is that you want your daughter to be a collaborator. So I need to demonstrate that I'm willing to collaborate and I'm willing to look at the other side of the table and understand at a fundamental level what's going on over there.
Absolutely. 100%. And then there were times where my husband, he really loves investing. He just loves it. I mean, if you look at his like Instagram algorithm, I'm like, you have the world's boringest algorithm. It is all about investing and the stock market. And I'm like, where are all the puppies? You know, listen, where are all the memes? But you know, I tell him I really don't want him to advance in such a way that it leaves me behind in the overall methodology of long-term conservative investing. And so I was like, how do I get more interested? And so I bought 2 books on Warren Buffett. One was an biography of Warren Buffett. And so it is his financial principles, but written as a narrative because I love to read and I love fiction. And I'm like, this is kind of like a blending education fiction, but really understanding like what his approaches were and how he spent his time in his methodology and thinking. And I also bought the book called Outliers. It outlines the stories of 10 CEOs. Oh, are you giving me the thumbs up, Shannon?
Yes.
You're giving me a thumbs up. Yes.
Amazing book by Malcolm Gladwell. Yes.
I mean, so it was such a big thing for me to start understanding the way that CEOs were looking at taking resources and reallocating capital. And it was just such a different way for me to see the way that investments are looked at. And so in my mind, this was me trying to get educated and show my daughter what it means to find a way to make what is not interesting to you a little bit more interesting and getting educated along the way.
100%. And I know you show up with authenticity when you say, hey, like this isn't my strong suit and this is not something that I've always been exposed to. However, there's a lot of listeners who are in that zone, but using it as the crutch to say, it's not something I'm good at. And I'm going to stay in my strengths and I'm going to stay in my zone. And to some extent, I agree with you, but I think the exposure to something uncomfortable is what will make you grow. And that's really, really, really important. And that's why I wanted to lean into that and ask you that question. So I really appreciate your answer.
Thank you.
But on that note, like you said, it's about you welcome with open arms new education and new challenge. And I've heard this through your show before, like, you know, working with someone to help you become a better speaker or working with professionals and experts on what it is you want to do. You basically say, I want to do this. What do I need to learn?
Absolutely.
But going back to that, I mean, it started with the photography business, right? All the way up through now you are the CEO of a tech SaaS company and doing all these new things. Where do you think that drive comes from or what would you kind of label that? Because I feel like it's a quality that not a ton of people possess. And I think that's what makes you especially unique is that it's more of this approach to these new challenges with open arms as opposed to, I don't know about that. I feel like you just jump in and go, I'll build the parachute. We'll make it work. And I love that. Where do you think that comes from? And just talk about how you've embraced that in your career.
So I often refer back to childhood experiences because I think that it's only then that I can understand why it means so much to me as an adult now. And going back to things that could be lost, right? So homes could be lost and cars could be lost. And so much like the opportunity to travel could be lost and your car could be broken into. And, you know, there's one car and it doesn't work. So everybody's taking the bus to church. And so there was all these things that kept on happening, that things that could disappear. And I didn't learn to read until I was 11 years old. I was never the smart kid and I was perpetually behind educationally. And so then all of a sudden something clicked for me and I learned how to read. And then I was a voracious reader. And then I started realizing that reading, AKA education, was something that couldn't be lost. And so I wanted to say, how much could I amass? Like you could take anything away from me, but you can't take away my education. And so I think that I kind of carried that subconsciously throughout high school. And then I got scholarships to go to college. And then I got scholarships to go to law school. And coming from like that kind of like academic perspective was like, this is how you get out from the barrio, right? Like education is your ticket out. It's your passport to getting into industries where regardless of the education that you have, no degree can ever prepare you to become a strong digital marketer, period, the end. It's only experience. And when I started seeing this, I started thinking to myself, well, how could I get educated? Because I saw my mom, she was 50 years old and I was 25. She had a relapse of brain cancer and the doctors had said her time to come. And so I thought to myself, I'm promptly having a midlife crisis because if I've already lived half of my life, how can I maximize the next 25 years? And really, really happy to say that my mom is still with us here today. But at the time, that was not the belief and that was not the overhauled sentiment from the professional medical community. So I thought to myself, how much can I get done in the least amount of time? And education, some people disagree, but for me, education was the fast track to do that. And so some people just don't understand why, as a very newish business owner in the digital marketing space, why I spent and invested in a mastermind. I was unqualified and unprepared to be in the mastermind. I was the dumbest person in the mastermind. I made the least amount of money in that mastermind. And yet I went in and I thought to myself, the mastermind will give me the answer. A mastermind will never teach you how. And I started realizing that the people who I was playing the game with were simply people asking for the answer and figuring out How? It was in that mastermind that I started understanding that once you figure out the question and you understand what the answer is, you try to learn as much as possible on your own. And then when you feel like you have maximized what you can learn on your own, then you're going to pay for the time and experience from somebody else. I've always believed that. It has always had a positive ROI. And the beauty about it is so at the time of this recording, I will speak candidly. I invested $25,000 in a 4-week program to have somebody teach me about stronger messaging. Now, I'm coming on the back of being 15 years as an entrepreneur. I have come up with multiple 7-figure revenue streams. I would think I'm pretty strong with messaging, but you want to know what? You could be a heck of a lot stronger. So it's not just paying the $25,000 and investing in a 4-week, 4-time coaching program in regards to messaging. What I'm doing is creating the framework for messaging that will be at minimum another 15 years in my career. So what is the ROI? Oh, I'm looking at an investment of $25,000, but over the next 15 years, that's going to be pennies. And I look at that as a short-term investment for long-term educational wealth.
I mean, that type of investment is like the good pair of jeans.
Oh, girl.
You know, it's like the one, like I can use that forever. It'll last me a good while.
Forever.
Yeah.
Forever. And then the grungier they get, the cooler you look,
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And the more you use them, the more they kind of mold to you, they fit you. I feel like that type of investment, and quite literally I invested in a stylist and I'm wearing said jeans that she recommended for me that were way too expensive. But here's what's funny. You invest in something and it's the ROI, you always have to factor in time. The ROI is the lifetime value. The ROI is how is this going to impact and my trajectory? This is going to help me pick the next direction. This is going to help propel me faster in the direction I am heading, not necessarily get to a short-term destination faster or better, but this is really investing for the long term. And I couldn't agree more. I think that's a very worthwhile investment with the right type of person, but also when you come to the table knowing what you came in for. And I have this analogy with masterminds too, where I've invested in masterminds and I always say it's like going to Target. If you don't have a list and know where the hell you're going when you get in there, you're going to get stuck and you're going to walk out spending a crap ton of money on stuff you didn't need. And because you're going to get sucked into the start a podcast, start this, do this. Oh, that sounds cool too. And then you go, what did I come in here for?
Right.
You have to always set an intention. What are you going to learn? What are you going to walk away with? What are you going to take action on rapidly so that you get results from it?
110%. So often, and you'll see this, you'll see that it's usually about a third of the people will come in and then they'll kind of fizzle for a matter of reasons, and there's no judgment for what that reasons is. And then there's about a third of people who will take what they know and they feel really good with a dopamine hit of learning more and then taking little action. And then at the end of the 6 or 12-month mastermind, they're kind of like, I just didn't really, and then there's a third of people who will take the little that they know, they get into messy action and then hit brick walls again and again and again. And then around a 6 or 12-month period, they'll be able to look back and say, I have progressed so much, not because of what they learned, but because of what they did. And so it is what you make of that investment 1,000 times over.
And I love the thought process of accumulating education, amassing it, and progressing forward. That is very interesting because I picture like a video game acquiring skill points and going, I can kill any boss because I got this backpack full of stuff because I spent more time in level 1 grabbing those extra little coins.
Right.
And now I am at the boss level with you and you are struggling. But I was over there collecting the little coins and I was waiting for this moment and I'm ready and I am prepared.
Right.
And I love that approach because it's not the typical short-term, what do you call that? It's kind of like this short-term gratification that everybody is kind of seeking naturally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. And what would you say, Jasmine, is the next challenge that you are facing or the next challenge that you are focusing on? What are you currently, you mentioned messaging, but what are you currently amassing education on right now?
Well, okay, I'll be the first to admit, I have tried evergreening efforts and spent a lot of money and didn't see the fruit of the labor. And I feel like our biggest challenge and where I'm spending the most time and opportunity is really understanding the differences between evergreen of different products, different approaches. And so as a subscription, I think that there has to be like nuances. And so I'm just spending a lot of time and resources into understanding how our SaaS business is traditionally grown, how are memberships in the digital marketing world grown? Who are the specialists in that industry? What is the LTV? How much can we acquire? What does that actually look like? And so just getting into the numbers, the data and analytics, and understanding what is the lever that we will pull for the greatest amount of return. And that is going to be my focus through the end of the year. And then thereafter going to be launching a course, but a course is something that we've done and we feel really strong and hopeful about. But with this particular course, we are partnering with another subscription company. And this is the first time that we're doing that. And so it's exciting and it's intimidating and it's nerve wracking. And this is the world that I dwell in. If I am not scared and if I'm not uncomfortable, I'm not growing. And now the exciting part, the new challenge is to sit in the uncomfortability until it becomes comfortable and then getting more uncomfortable along the way.
Yeah. And I feel like there are some people, you sound like one of them. I feel like I'm one of them as well, that if I'm in comfort, I'm actually uncomfortable. I get restless.
Girl. Yes. Yes.
The restlessness is real. When you go, okay, I did it. Okay, now what? Like you can't sit in it for more than a second before you're on to the next thing.
No.
So on that note, this is something we don't do enough, I feel, as entrepreneurs. What have you celebrated recently or accomplished and been proud of?
Oh my God, Shannon, I don't know, girl. You got some like magic ball. You got some magic ball behind there. I was like, where is this even coming from?
I promise you, this is all just on the fly.
So I recently took a 2-week break. And so for the first week, just got off social media. Did not get anything assigned from the team. It was just me spending time finishing out projects and focusing on that. And then I went away on a solo retreat for a week. And I know it's weird and people have opinions and it doesn't really matter to me. I married my high school sweetheart. I've never spent more than 2 days away from him, like 2 nights away from him. I've never spent more than 2 days away. I've never spent more than 1 night away from my daughter. And so I kind of felt that I was reaching a point and I would never, now I could say I wouldn't admit that I was running really fast in a direction and I wasn't seeing like the big picture. And so my husband, business partner had said, hey, I really think you need to take a break. And I'm just like, yeah, no, there's no time for that right now. And I had mentioned it to our COO. I said, yeah, JD said I should take a break. And she looked up from her computer and said, yes. And I was like, rude, no time for break. And then our mentor had flown in. We met with her for 3 days. And I was talking to her about all these things that I want to do. And she's like, great. She turned to the team and she says, you're going to run with this and you're going to run with that and you're going to run with this. And then she pointed at me and said, and you're going to take a break and you're going to do it before the end of the month. And I was just like, where did that come from? And so, of course, I was like a possum in the night in a garbage pail being like, wait, what? I was like frozen. I was like, you're wrong. And took some time and talked to JD and he said, I think you really need to get away. And at first I was very angry and I was resentful because I'm like, why are people telling me what to do? Like they don't know. And so I was begrudgingly went, and it was a health and wellness retreat. So no technology, nothing. It was meditation, and it was yoga, and it was health and wellness conversations, and it was compassion workshops. And I'm looking at this itinerary and I'm thinking, oh, hell nah, this is no. And then by day 2, something kind of cracked in me. And then I'm just journaling. I am not talking to anybody. I FaceTime JD and Luna in the morning at night. And so I returned home 7 days later, and I actually didn't think I was going to make it. I told JD, I'm like, I'm coming home. Like, I'm coming home. And every day he would say, you made it through this day, and tomorrow we're going to talk and you're going to make it through that day. And I came home and I had cried more in 7 days than I had in 7 years. And when I say cry, it wasn't sadness. It can only have been interpreted as release. And so I have had such a metamorphosis in that time period that when I came home, nothing about my business, nothing about my life, nothing about my bank account, nothing about my legacy, and nothing about my ambition had changed. The thoughts and power that I had applied to them were so radically different. And when I started the year, every year I get like a word that comes to me. And this year my word was rebirth. And on the podcast, I would say, oh, my word is rebirth. My word is rebirth. And then I kept on being like, well, when am I going to be reborn? Because I still feel like the same. And I didn't know that it was going to come on the back of complete isolation, solitude, journaling and doing things wildly different than I had ever done. And I came back and I just felt like I was celebrating the new me and celebrating that I just truly, nothing changed, Shannon. And what I came back and I felt I'm like success is a foregone conclusion. I am unmessable with. And everything that I want is on the other side of not quitting. And it
Love
just
that.
feels like, come on, come on. And that feels so freaking good. It feels like I'm a different person inside out.
It's almost the irony of when you embrace the surrender, you are unmessable with. But like
Absolutely.
we don't surrender because we feel like that's the opposite. We feel like oh, if I
Absolutely.
surrender to this, I lose control.
Yes.
And you probably felt even more in control after by saying, I am the boss of how I react to all of these things. Like I feel more in
100%.
control by surrendering, which is so ironic.
100%. And it's crazy that you use the word surrender because it wasn't an issue. And so at this health and wellness center, you're meeting with like trained professionals and therapists, and you're doing a lot of inner work. And the distinction for me was, I think I went in being like, I like to control things. And it came out very clearly. I don't like to control things. But what I can't do is release things. So people look at my career and be like, oh, she did these quick pivots and oh, she's grown a lot. And yes, that is true. But the reason why that was happening is because I always saw the next branch. I could release the next branch and take a big gaping leap towards the next one, but I saw it. And so I kind of felt like probably in the last like year and a half, I had been not in control. I had been refusing to release because I couldn't see the next thing. And so I think that being on this trip had really empowered me to release and be and depend on the team in ways that I felt deeply responsible for. I felt deeply responsible to them. I felt deeply responsible for my family. I felt deeply responsible for all these things I didn't know I was subconsciously carrying. And so to be able to release responsibility, to be able to invite support, and then to be able to simply release, surrender, and just be. It's coming. Like it is coming and it is already done. It is already successful. It is already bigger than I could possibly imagine. But do I have the courage to sit in the middle of the white space? And it was then that I decided I do, and I am, and I'm going to sit as long as humanly possible because I know I've already won. It's already done. Do I have the patience to sit in the courage of the unknown? And I am. That's where I'm at. So I celebrate.
I love it. Yeah. But it goes back to a lot of what you've said in your narrative about, you know, realizing that the more you make, the more is at stake.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, when the stakes are higher, you kind of hold a tighter grip on everything.
Correct.
Because it's like, oh, I'm accumulating more. I have to hold on to all these things and bring them with me.
Correct.
And it's like, be okay with letting them go and say, I am reaching the next level. I don't have to bring it all with me. I don't have to bring my rucksack from the first camp up to the third one. I can shed it and be like, I am ready for new challenges now. That is really, really powerful. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you for asking me a question. Thank you for giving me the space to share it.
Of
I
course.
haven't shared it. I mean, other than my family and very close friends. So here we
Thank
are
you.
doing it here.
Here we are. I know you'll always share authentically, and you'll never turn down a question.
No, I won't.
No, but and I hope that you're listening right now and going, damn, like what is this, like a financial therapy session? You know, like what have I just been listening to? And this is authentically, these are the conversations we should be having, guys. This is the type of stuff we should be talking about, especially with fellow women. And especially, you know, just to put it out there to say, hey, you're not alone. Because I know there are people listening who are going, yeah, I totally feel that way. And I totally feel like I've been hanging on to too many things. And everyone says to take a break, but I feel like it's a very surface level symptom cure. When they say take a break, it's like you don't realize the transformation that actually happens when you choose to let that go and do it in your own way. It may be a fitness or yoga retreat, but it may just look like, hey, you know, going to another town or even in the same town and getting a hotel room and just like being for a little bit and getting out of your environment, having an environmental change, which will change your behavior, your reactions, and so on. I advocate for that all the time because we never give ourselves permission to do it.
Absolutely. And thank you for highlighting that, because what happens is that it sounds like somebody needs to do a week away by themselves. And like, I've been in business 15, 16 years. I've never done it in this long. And so what did it look like before? It would be like an hour or two like you had said, changing your environment. I would sit at the beach, I would take a journal, and I would just write. And it's like building that practice is just as effective. You probably have to do it a little bit more often, but it's just as effective as being away for a few days. So thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Very true.
And it can be integrated, right? It
Absolutely.
doesn't have to be fixed. Like
Absolutely.
I've integrated in a morning walk without doing any work. I listen to podcasts, I listen to books, but I just walk and I listen. I also just listen to the dogs, listen to the kids,
Right.
listen to the ocean, and just say, I'm just going to go enjoy where I'm at right now and just be present for an hour before I start my day.
Good for
And I
you.
try to do that 2 or 3 times a week to start at a minimum. And that is my version of the retreat or the reset or just something to make
Absolutely.
me come in and go, all right, now I'm in control of my day because I took control of that.
Good for
And
you.
I said, that's what I'm going to do. So I think that that's so important to do for yourself.
Good for you.
Especially for you to model that too, because I know a lot of people do look up to you and look up to other creators, other business owners, other influencers, and so on. And they'll say, damn, she's doing a lot. And to also peel back the curtain and to say, yes, but no. That doesn't mean you have to, or that doesn't mean this or that. And I wanna wrap up on this note too, which is, Lord knows you have a team. You have an amazing team. I've also interacted with them. And I think that a lot of people will do that comparison. They'll compare their business to your business or say, this is what I need to be creating. And they don't realize that you have this amazing support system behind you. Let's talk about hiring your team. And I want to integrate that in with that idea of releasing, letting go. Maybe it's the delegation. Maybe it's giving them control of their own metrics or their own accountability and ownership. Let's talk about that journey for you and how that's made a difference in your business.
So, my husband and I started every business together. The first business that I had started was my photography business, and we worked together, but it was still me, the photographer, the name, the face, creating the content, doing all the deliverables, all client work. And he was behind the scenes doing a lot of like travel, legal, fulfillment, things of that nature. And so we worked together for 10 years before we hired anybody. And so for somebody who's listening and thinks like, I need to build up my team, my greatest regret was not hiring a team member earlier. And I think we held on to things a little too long. So big first takeaway is the minute that you could save up to invest in a person, as long as the ROI is $1 more than what you're paying them, like you pay them like $14,000 a year. And if you're making $14,001, you're on the upside of it because it's freeing you to do and invest your time elsewhere. And your time is going to be the thing that makes money. Your VA assistant, first employee, is going to be the thing that sustains the money. So start thinking about that earlier on. The second thing I would talk about specifically, and I feel like I can only talk about this now with such clarity, is I should have created clear roles for the people I was hiring on the front end. So I kind of feel like I was juggling 1,000 things, right? I was juggling oranges and bowling pins and knives, and then one of them was on fire. And so it's like I was just looking at somebody be like, "You are you breathing? Are you fine? Come, just help me. Take anything from me." And so all of a sudden, I got a lot of great people who are great jugglers. But when was I ever going to stop juggling? Because when I handed things over, I simply just took more things to juggle. And then I looked, I had to take a big step back and say, okay, what do we actually need in the business? Where is my time most effectively spent? And then I started having to say, like, these people are really great at being Swiss Army knives, but when the business got to a certain point, we needed less Swiss Army knives and more surgical scalpels. And the only way that you are able to attract a high-performing, very specialized person on your team is to write a highly specialized job description. And so I'm like, if any is listening and you have never even hired anybody, do yourself the greatest favor and just brain dump everything you want this person to do. Just brain dump and write it in the most simplest terms. Don't get fancy. Because when you have a very clear job description, there is some special unicorn person who's going to look at that and immediately understand that they can do what you want them to do. So don't put any pressure that has to look like anybody else's job description. And then the last and final thing would be that I wish I would have owned it sooner, is that I assume that people can be in my head. And even if you have the cleanest job description, it's really important to set standing meetings and feedback loops that aren't at all personal. Like the more you give feedback, the more less it becomes less personal. Like if you're like, I got to wait for my quarterly review, and then you unfurl a list of things, that's going to make somebody feel unsafe. Immediately, if I am not getting what I need in that time, I'm just saying, hey, there's got to be this. Hey, there's got to be this. At what point can I start seeing changes? What can I expect? Where are you getting stuck? And so those things is like, I wish I would have hired sooner. I wish my role descriptions would have been a lot cleaner. And then I wish it would have it really embodied, it's a power trait to say, I want to build you so that you can build me, so we can build each other. And that only happens on a feedback loop. I wish I would have been more safe and less worried about like, I don't want to hurt their feelings. You actually hurt their feelings when you're not giving them feedback or a clear way to win. And so now I'm just like, I'm not mincing words. If I'm not getting it when I need it, I'll say, this is what I need. How do we get better? What's the metric point? And how do I get things out of your way? That has had a profound effect in how we're cultivating the team.
Love that. And that thank you for that. As I'm building my team, advice I absolutely needed to hear. So I appreciate that.
Awesome.
You guys are listeners of podcasts. Clearly you're here at Keep What You Earn. So you have to listen to the Jasmine Star Show. It's amazing. I listen to it nearly daily. Whenever you release them, I think we're up to 2 a week now.
We are. Atta girl.
Yeah, I'm listening to them all, and it's one of my favorites, guys. So please make sure you subscribe to the Jasmine Star Show. She shares wisdom like this every single day. You can get enough of it. So, and Jasmine, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you greatly.